Welcome to the Podkey summary of Modernize Your UIKit app from WWDC 2026. A lot of the latest iOS 27 app changes really point in one direction. Apps need to stop thinking in fixed screens and start thinking in flexible scenes. That affects launch behavior, layout, navigation, even how Siri can interact with what's on screen. And Apple's also giving developers a pretty practical assist here, with automatic trait tracking and an Xcode modernization agent that can clean up a surprising amount of old code. The big one up front: if an app is built with the latest SDKs, UI Scene Lifecycle is no longer optional. If there's no UI Scene delegate, the app just won't launch. So this has moved from nice-to-have migration work into must-do territory. The reason is pretty straightforward. Scene Lifecycle is what lets an app respond when its window changes size dynamically. That's the groundwork for resizable windows on iPad, on the Mac, and even on iPhone mirroring, where the app's shape can change in ways older app lifecycle assumptions just don't handle well. One of those older assumptions is reaching for UI screen main whenever you need geometry. In a resizable world, that can give you the wrong answer, because the main screen is not the same thing as the actual window your app is living in. The better pattern is to get the screen from the Windows window, scene. Or even better, avoid hard screen references entirely when you can. For scale, trait, collection, the display, scale is the reliable source. For size and shape, the window scene's effective. Geometry gives information that updates as the scene gets resized, which is exactly what you want, instead of caching some number that made sense 5 minutes ago. There's also a quality of life improvement here with trait handling. In iOS 27, if layout, subviews, drawrect, and similar methods use trait collection properties, the system can automatically track those dependencies and call the methods again when the relevant traits change. That cuts down on a bunch of manual observation code, which honestly is the kind of code nobody misses when it goes away. And if you do depend on traits that aren't automatically tracked, they're still register for trait changes, which gives you a closure, callback, so you can invalidate caches or refresh whatever data depends on those traits. Another shift Apple is pushing pretty hard is to stop making layout decisions based on user interface IDM. That phone versus pad check just doesn't carry enough meaning anymore when windows can be resized and the same app can show up in very different shapes. The recommendation now is to use size classes and the actual dimensions of your view hierarchy. Same story with orientation. Supported interface orientations are really just preferences now, and in resizable environments the system may ignore them. So if code is branching on portrait or landscape, that needs another look. Apple called out iPhone mirroring in particular, because it always reports portrait orientation, which is a pretty good example of why orientation has stopped being a trustworthy layout signal. On the navigation front, iPhone apps can now opt into showing the tab bar as a sidebar by setting sidebar.preferred placement to .sidebar. The important catch is that this is still system controlled. Availability depends on the horizontal size class, and once the app opts in, it can't flip back to a tab bar at runtime, just because it feels like it. There is an is-available property on the sidebar though, and that gives apps a way to adapt when the sidebar isn't present. So if your design assumes that roomy sidebar space, you can still provide an alternate structure, like nested tabs, when the interface gets tighter. Navigation bars are getting more predictable too. Developers can now explicitly say whether the bar should always slide away during scrolling, never slide away, or use the default behavior, with bar minimization behavior. There's also bar minimization safe area adjustment, which can suppress the automatic safe area inset changes that normally come along with that minimization behavior. And one small but useful visual note: the .automatic scroll edge appearance style now has its own look. It no longer swaps between the old soft and hard styles. So if an app had custom overrides that were really tuned around .soft, those are worth revisiting. A more user-facing addition is that menus in iOS 27 can automatically show an Ask Siri button when the current context makes sense for it. That gives users a direct way to start a Siri conversation from inside the app, instead of treating Siri like a completely separate lane. To make those interactions smarter, there's a new View Annotations API. Developers can tag specific views with app entities so Siri can answer with more app-specific context. And for apps that load resources through drag and drop, those delegate paths also get invoked when Siri initiates that loading, which keeps the integration tied into existing app behavior instead of inventing a whole separate mechanism. Finally, Apple's trying to make all this migration work less painful with an app modernization agent in Xcode 27. It can automatically convert main screen calls, replace orientation checks with size class logic, and migrate projects to scene lifecycle. If something is ambiguous, it can ask clarifying questions instead of just plowing ahead and making a mess, which is a comforting design choice. There's also a workflow angle here for bigger teams. The modernization skill can be exported as Markdown with Xcrun Agent Skills Export. That means teams can plug the same guidance into custom tooling and use it across larger code bases, which is probably where this becomes especially valuable. So the theme this time is adaptability, and Apple is being pretty direct about it. If an app still assumes one screen, one orientation, one device shape, the platform is moving on. The good news is the path forward looks a lot clearer now, and maybe even slightly less painful than the usual migration season. This episode was generated by Podkey. Create your own at podkey.fm.